Nlight Software. Welcome and thank you for attending today's webinar entitled Bolster HPE ITSM with Data Center Service Management, or DCSM. We will be talking about how companies are using HPE and Nlight together for a more complete view of ITIL processes. If you have any questions, please submit them via the chat box on your screen, and we will answer them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. Please note that the webinar will be recorded and be made available to you within 48 hours. All right, so let's get this show on the road. I'd like to now introduce to you Mark Gatos, CMO of Nlight Software. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, Jason. And we're fortunate today. As Jason just said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Nlight Software. I want to thank everybody for the time you're going to be spending with us. And we are fortunate today. We have a additional guest speaker presenting with us. We have Mark Bradley of HPE. Mark, did you want to sort of introduce yourself? What part of HPE you're part of, especially since that's a dynamic thing nowadays?
Sure. Thank you, Mark, and thanks for having me join today. I'm excited to be here. My name is Mark Bradley. I'm the Software Product Marketing Manager for UCMDB, CMS, and Asset Manager, and I'm part of the Service and Portfolio Management Software Group. So I'm excited to be here.
Great. Well, thanks indeed for joining with us today. We appreciate it, Mark. And today's agenda is going to be pretty quick. We try and keep, I'm a big believer in very fast shock and awe webinars, right, where you give information fast, because most people find webinars go a little too slow for most people. So we try to move through the slides pretty fast, because you can always go and look at them again if you didn't catch something before. And as we mentioned before, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them, and we'll try to get to them at the end. We're going to try and keep this webinar to a crisp 30 minutes with a presentation and with Q&A. So we'll try and adhere to that. If we don't get to all the questions, we promise we'll get to you offline. So today's agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about Nlight, but the big portion of this webinar, we're going to be talking about extending Nlight into HPE ITSM. And this quote from Andy Lawrence over at 451 Research sort of encapsulates it. If you think about it, ITSM is super for process, right? ITSM is great for process, for ITIL. That's what we've been doing with ITSM for, over a decade. It's phenomenal at establishing processes, making those processes repeatable, measure them, and improve them. And in a sense, what we're starting to see is the merge of the data center into those processes, that ITSM is starting to extend down into the data center to give it that great sort of process management and to give it the discipline and rigor that you get with ITSM and ITIL. And as he sort of references here, when you bring the two together, it's sort of like Reese's peanut butter cups. You get chocolate, you get peanut butter, you get Reese's. When you get sort of the data center and ITSM, you get data center service management. So we're going to be talking about data center service management. Without any further ado, let's sort of move into it. So if you think about today, managing the modern data center, a lot of people probably think they're just clouds where, everybody talks about the cloud, and grandma probably thinks her compute capacity comes out of the cloud. Well, in actuality, there are data centers and data rooms out there, and most people think of them as relatively static, except for the people who work there. There's actually quite a bit going on, right? You've got the people, the assets, the racks, the servers, you've got the networking, you've got all the resources that the assets are dependent on, whether it's power or cooling or space. You've got different requirements and processes and policies. And while all of this is being managed, probably the thing that's not represented on this slide is the word change. There's constant change happening in the data center. Adds, moves, changes. You've got consolidations. You've got migrations. You've got tech refreshes occurring. You've got new servers being added to support new applications. You've got old servers going out, replaced with new, more efficient, faster servers. So there's a lot of moving parts in the data center, and so it can be very challenging to try and manage this with spreadsheets and Visio drawings. And so that's sort of where Nlight comes in. And so for those that aren't familiar with Nlight, Nlight basically helps people automate sort of the management of their data center service. And if you think of the data center as a service, it's providing compute capacity to the applications that are either run internally or externally for an organization. We provide software that helps manage that data center service. And so we have some of the, the best companies in the world using our technology, some of the largest, most sophisticated companies, as well as small and medium-sized companies who use us. In fact, some of our best logos I can't even put on this particular slide because the logo police will come after me. Though this is what Nlyte does, is we help companies sort of manage the data center service. And we're the first company with a modern data center infrastructure management solution. And at the foundation of DCSM, Data Center Service Management, is this thing called DCSM. And what is DCSM? It's Data Center Infrastructure Management. It's managing all the stuff in the data center. And we'll get into that in a couple slides. But we've been developing our solutions for over a decade. We're on the 7th generation of our technology, and soon we'll be introducing Generation 8 very soon. And this is all we focus on, right? We're actually one of the 4 companies who are in the Magic Quadrant for Data Center Infrastructure Management from Gartner. We're one of the 4 companies, but we're the only company that this is all we do. We live and die by the success of our customers and their data center service management. And as a result, we have some of the greatest customers in the world, some of the largest and most sophisticated customers. And as I mentioned before, we're recognized by Gartner as a leader in the Magic Quadrant. We also have the highest ranking product in their what they call their critical capabilities report, which gets into detailed evaluation of products. So we have the highest ranking product for enterprises and mid-market organizations according to Gartner. So what do we mean by managing the data center? So a picture is worth 1,000 words. So we put a few pictures here. So this is so I don't have to speak thousands and thousands of words at you. So as I mentioned before, there's actually a lot going on in the data center, right? You're managing servers, you're managing racks and space and power and cooling and workflow and cabling, and you're managing the people and the processes that are occurring here while you're monitoring power and monitoring potential issues that could be occurring inside the data center. So this sort of gives you a feel for the types of things that Nlyte tries to manage within the data center. Again, we cover sort of the entire process from beginning to end and all the different sort of processes within the data center. So specifically, what Nlyte does is provide functionality throughout the entire data center lifecycle. Again, if you're not familiar with the data center, you may not know there's actually quite a bit going on there. And so we support the entire life cycle within the data center. In fact, one of our largest customers, from the very beginning, as servers roll in, which roll in every single week, they get scanned into Nlyte, and Nlyte will tell personnel where those assets need to go, how they need to be configured, how they need to be cabled into what systems they're cabled up for networking, for power. And so it basically starts with Nlyte when servers are received or assets are received. But as you can see, there are a variety of different sort of processes occurring in the data center. We support asset life cycle management at the data center floor, migrations and consolidations, workflow management. You get into what-if scenarios, predictive analysis, where you need to decide. I don't know how that woman can read that what-if. It's behind, but that's a whole other story. But you get into asking questions. If we were to, put in 10 racks of servers, what would be the impact? Do we have enough capacity from a power and a space perspective? So we support the entire sort of life cycle of the data center. And so, again, one of the things that also ties into this is sort of tying into other systems. And that's where we're going to get into tying into HPE ITSM in just a second. So really, if you take everything on that last slide, DCSM is all about covering that. Data center service management covers the entire service that's being provided via the data center. And what I usually say is the main thing you're trying to get out of a data center is compute capacity. So data center service management sort of has 3 main components. As I mentioned before, the foundation is DCSM, and a lot of folks are familiar with data center infrastructure management. It's about managing the infrastructure and the resources that are inside the data center, right? Where do the servers go? Where do the racks go? How do you go into the power and the cabling and the space and all the elements that are occurring there? But additionally, you've got to manage, you've got people. We don't have robots working in our data center. We have people working there. And so you've got to have the ability to manage the people and processes and policies. So the second sort of main component within data center service management is managing workflow, managing policies, making sure people adhere to the policies of the organization of how they want things cabled, how they want servers positioned, how whatever it happens to be the policies of how an organization performs their functions. You've got to manage the workflow, and you've got to manage the policies so that as changes come in, they get done in a consistent fashion. Again, back to sort of mirroring the world of ITIL, of ITIL. You want consistent processes so you can measure those processes and consistently improve them. And lastly, data, as I often say, data center service management is not an island. You've got to tie into many different systems, and we'll have a slide that talks about that a little bit. But you've got to tie into a variety of different systems, whether they're facility systems, whether they're RFID systems, or you want to tie into ITSM. And that's where we're going to get into talking about how you tie into HPE ITSM to increase the value of your data center service management and increase the value of your HPE investment. And so at the bottom here, I think it's where it nails it, is DCSM is really about managing infrastructure, but really what most organizations are trying to accomplish is they want to cost-effectively deliver their data center service, and that's really what data center service management is all about. And so, as I mentioned, a core element of data center service management is tying into ITSM systems and tying into other systems and orchestrating that. And so as the webinar is about tying into HPE, we'll talk about some of those use cases, but I'll turn it over to Mark to sort of talk about the ITSM management portfolio at HPE. I'll let Mark take it away from there.
Great, thank you, Mark. And
sure.
So this is, you know, as Mark described, you know, as you go into, you know, deep and double click into the data center and really reach across your infrastructure and pull those components together, that's critical to the success of your overall IT service management solution. And so what HPE brings to the table is a very wide perspective, and we leave areas of opportunity for our partners. And so what you're seeing here is a great example of deep subject matter expertise in a data center. And then what you're looking at here is how it comes together. And when you're looking at this, you know, looking kind of a bottoms-up approach, you've got, you know, multi-supplier ecosystems, you've got big data, you've got multiple deployment platforms. You know, how do I bring this all together? We have our, you know, universal CMDB. That's a central location where we're picking the key elements that are necessary to kind of bring the big picture together. And then that kind of feeds right up into, you know, our service desk solution, where we have both Service Manager and Service Anywhere. You know, one's on-prem, one's for SaaS. And then within that, you have a variety of ITIL processes that are utilized. So you have change management, your entire workflow happening through change management, request fulfillment, as you're going out and propagating and pushing out software and pushing out infrastructure, desktops, laptops, mobile devices. You're tying into asset manager and doing the governance and contracts, etc. And then all that kind of feeds up one more layer where we've got one perspective where we have big data analytics. Where we're taking and crunching the data and providing insight and perspectives, coupled with kind of the gateway into our solutions, Propel, where the end user can go to a portal, and then based on who they are, what they have access to, and then the whole approval process that kind of feeds back down. And then across the top, this IT performance metrics. So we're kind of taking a bigger approach, you know, wider approach, and I think partnerships like this is a great example of how we can work together and give that additional insight for our customers. So I'll pass it back to you, Mark, for
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. And for everybody on the line, if you have any questions, feel free to submit them. Mark and I will both be online to answer them at the end here. So thanks for that sort of overview. I'll sort of drop it down a level based on sort of the use cases we see here at Enlight. And there are some use cases where we're not even going to be talking today. One that comes to mind is one of our larger customers actually takes every piece of energy information and feeds it into HPE's big data solution specifically to potentially predict issues with hardware. As they see energy issues occurring, they want to basically get ahead of issues predictively before they occur. But we're actually not even going to be talking about that particular unique situation where what we see most customers doing is tying into one of these three sort of areas. UCMDB at the top, Service Manager, Service Anywhere, and Asset Manager. By the way, Enlight has both an on-demand and a premise offering, so you can, again, just like Service Manager and Service Anywhere, you can either use it in the cloud or install it on-premise. So as I said, if you think about Mark was just talking about the HPE ITSM solutions, here's sort of the three main areas we find customers tying in Enlight. And we have a very large platform, as you can see down below, for data center service management, where we're managing elements within the data center, and we're tying into a variety of different systems. Off to the left, we tie into RFID and barcode and a lot of these types of systems. On the right-hand side, you can see we tie into facilities, type systems, BMS systems, and so forth. But we're seeing a big uptake in the last 9 to 12 months of customers saying, hey, we want to tie into the ITSM solutions. And I'll talk about tying into UCMDB and tying into these other types of systems in detail in just a second. But at a high level, these are sort of the main use cases we see of customers tying in data center service management into HPE's ITSM. So the benefits of doing this really are reducing your costs, right, of improving the management of energy and assets and space. Maybe, if you do it effectively, you can delay having to buy additional data centers or data rooms, so there's a great opportunity to reduce costs. You can increase the efficiency of personnel by giving them tools to help them manage their data center service rather than having them rely on spreadsheets and Visio drawings and AutoCAD drawings. You're increasing the agility of the business to the organization to respond to the needs of the business, right? If the information is not accurate, right, if you don't have that complete connection between what's happening at the data center floor and what's happening in the ITSM systems, it will slow an organization down. When a company wants to make changes to the data center, if they want to deploy new apps or deploy new web services that sit on top of the data center and that information is not up to date or accurate, it slows everything down. If you've got to remediate any issues occurring, if the information is not accurate in the data center, it takes more time, and IT is just less responsive because the information is not accurate. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the integration points. And lastly, by tying these systems together, by tying what's going on in the data center with the layers above, right, the application infrastructure and the applications themselves, you increase the speed at which an organization can respond to audits or that come up, whether they're external audits for federal agencies or whether internal audits to make sure you're being in compliance with the policies of the organization. So again, really, data center service management sort of ties into a variety of different parts. We don't have time to go into all of them, but we're going to kind of take the main two use cases we see of companies tying data center service management into ITSM. So again, there are a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot that goes into HPE's product. It's a very large portfolio of products that represent their HPE ITSM portfolio, but we're going to sort of hit on the main ones here. So the first one is really tying into Service Manager, which could either be on-demand or premise, and whether Service Manager or Service Anywhere. So the whole idea here is, if you think about it, if somebody wants to make a change, you submit it into the change request system, in HP. And without a direct connection and integration into DCSM, what happens is that change, let's say somebody wants to install, 2 more racks of servers in a particular data center. Well, that'll go through the process of getting approved, going through purchasing, of handling that process on the HP side. But then when it's actually approved, it gets tossed over a curtain to the data center, and then you lose visibility. You lose visibility on what's being done, who's doing the task, how long is it going to take, how much does it cost, is it being done according to the policies? And then usually what happens, an email is sent, and then when the job's completed, an email comes back. Well, what happens by tying HPE ITSM to Enlight's DCSM, you're now getting full visibility. And so what happens is the change is requested, it's approved, but now it gets punched out into Enlight. And at that point, our workflow will take over according to whatever workflow, with very flexible, powerful workflow. It will take over that given request, in this particular case for 2 more racks of servers. It will identify what needs to be done, what assets are coming in, what power will be used, where those assets need to go, where they need to be installed, how they need to be installed. And that entire process is now managed. So again, using sort of the ITIL framework, you create the process, you then can sort of measure it and then constantly improve it. And so throughout that entire life cycle, you're passing information back to HP. So the HP system, Service Manager and Service Anywhere, have full visibility on what was done, who did it, how long it took, so it gets more information, which basically empowers the change management personnel to increase the control and the transparency across the entire stack. You're reducing the time to deploy and decommission assets. You're increasing the accuracy of the information, and overall you're increasing the value of your HPE ITSM investment. Additionally, you're just getting increased transparency across the organization of what it truly costs to deliver that service. So that's a big, question nowadays. Cloud is causing people to ask, well, we can go to Amazon or Rackspace or Equinix for X. How much does it cost for us to deliver this service? And by having that integration, you truly get an idea of how much it costs to deliver your data center service. And the next area, probably the one we see the most of, is folks tying data center service management into their UCMDB. And the whole idea, again, here is that as assets are being installed or they're being changed or modified in any way, that is being captured inside Enlight. And then that information is passed up to the UCMDB. And you might say to yourself, well, the UCMDB already has that asset information. Well, the bottom line is there's a variety of information that is not reflected typically in the UCMDB to start with. So we have information such as power information on assets. As assets are moving, right, we are the system of record at the data center floor. As those changes are occurring, we capture that and feed it into HPE UCMDB. And so the beauty of that is, as the changes occur, the UCMDB is always up to date. And if you don't have that integration, don't have that connection, what happens is you put the assets in, the changes are made in the UCMDB, but then over time, the data center starts making changes as requests come in, and the UCMDB starts losing accuracy, and it starts sort of fading away in terms of the amount of accuracy it has on the actual representation of what's happening in the data center floor. So using this connection between Enlight's data center service management into the UCMDB, you're feeding in information about, you're feeding information that's not typically in the UCMDB, so you have more accurate depiction of the assets. You get any changes occurring with those assets. You get dependencies between assets. If particular switches are tied to particular servers or dependent on particular switches, that information is represented in the data center service management system and can be fed up into the UCMDB, all with the intent of making sure that the UCMDB is as accurate as possible, because what happens is many people in the organization, from accounting to operations to DevOps, depend on the UCMDB to be accurate to do their jobs, and if the information is not accurate, it just slows everyone down, costs everyone money, and can potentially lead to failures within the data center or outages. So again, just to summarize, we're sort of coming to the end of the 30 minutes. So I want to make sure we save time for Q&A. There's a great deal of value connecting what you're doing in data center service management into the HPE ITSM portfolio of products, really. And the key is Nlight provides very flexible, out-of-the-box connectors. We actually have a web services messaging architecture that's part of our architecture, right? We have a framework that sits within our architecture that allows us to integrate into a wide variety of systems if they support RESTful APIs and are open. But in the case of HPE, we have pre-built connectors into the UCMDB and into Service Manager, and Service Anywhere. And the key here is these pre-built connectors allow you to easily integrate and decide what information you want to pass between the two systems, and allows you to integrate from basically the concrete up to the application and know everything that's going on and monitor those changes, right? And you get this correlated IT view of the data center with your critical facilities infrastructure, right? That in the end, it allows you to integrate what's going on in the data center in real time into what's happening into the systems, into the ITSM systems, and vice versa. As changes are occurring that are requested inside HPE ITSM, that information can be passed down to the data center to basically do what is requested of the data center and ensuring that the data center services is operating in full sync with what's going on in ITSM. So I'm on the home page at Nlight. If you're interested, there is a whiteboard video where a little hand will draw you a little whiteboard video and take you through an explanation of this at a deeper level. So if you're interested in that, I will point you at the nlight.com website, and right on the home page you can see there's a means by which you can watch this whiteboard video. It's a 3-minute video that will sort of take you through this a little more extensively. Also, I would suggest if you're interested in hearing more webinars from Nlight, please check out our webinar section of our website. The next one is, for those of you who are in the federal space, is going to be talking about the Federal Data Center Consolidation Initiative, which the federal government had put into place. And so we're going to be talking about how data center service management can be used to comply with that particular initiative. And so, as I said, we'd leave some time here for Q&A. I am going to turn it over to our moderator, Jason, and he's going to let us know if any questions have come in. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, Mark. And Mark, great content there. So we have a couple of questions coming in from the audience, so thank you for your questions out there. The first question is, what HP products can be integrated with Nlight? Only UCMDB?
No, I thought we hit on that. We actually have pre-built connectors to UCMDB. We also have pre-built connectors into Service Manager, so you can tie into both of those. Additionally, because we have this open platform and we have a framework for communication, we already have customers integrating into other systems, such as HPE's big data system. We have one large customer, as I mentioned before, who's capturing literally tens of thousands of servers, energy data points, and feeding that into HPE's big data system to ensure that they can basically identify issues before they occur. So again, to answer specifically the question, the short answer is we have pre-built connectors into the UCMDB and into Service Manager and Service Anywhere.
Great. Follow-up question. So when integrating with UCMDB, where does the information reside, HPE or Nlight?
Okay.
You want me to take?
Oh, yeah, go for it, Mark.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you want me to take that one? No. Very good question. And I think what you're seeing here is HPE, as Mark was starting to say, it depends. Every implementation is just a little bit different in terms of the challenges that they're trying to address, the information that they need to provide. and the audience that they need to address. And I think from the UCMDB perspective, because we kind of take a wide approach, you know, you're seeing when you go to double click on something, it's you know, there's enough there to figure out what's going on, and then it connects you through the rest of the processes and technologies. And then I think from an Nlight perspective, there's a double click on and brings more depth. You know, it's kind of got that good to great concept of you know, pick your poison and go deep, and they went deep into the data center, so that you're seeing things like power, you're seeing things like you know, key elements that would be to the data center. And I think we had a couple of screenshots there too, where you showed some of the additional elements as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's up to an organization where they want what information to reside, because it is synchronous, and so you can have information in multiple directions, because there's information within the UCMDB that Nlight you might want to capture in Nlight for the data center personnel to be aware of. One of the other areas, though it isn't referenced in this presentation, we often tie into virtual systems. We tie into hypervisors in order to get a better idea of what particular virtuals are running on which physical devices, so that if you know, an organization wants to make plan changes to their application, they can see which applications are running on which virtuals, which are running on which physical elements, so that if they want to do migration or there's issues with power, they have full visibility. So, but thanks for that answer, Mark. And Jason?
Yeah, another question came in from the audience. Thank you again, audience. So the question is, does the SM9 integration include the CMDB, or do the benefits only work in the UCMDB?
Mark, I don't.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. Maybe that's gone beyond us. I don't know.
Sure.
Mark,
Sure. No, that's a very good question. So if I understood it correctly, it's you know, they're on Service Manager 9. Is that what the question was? And if the integrations are to CMDB or UCMDB, in those cases, you know, we make that integration, you know, part of the HP family. It kind of comes out of the box for both of those scenarios. So in particular, if you're just asking from Service Manager or Service Anywhere to UCMDB, yes, that's something that we provide out of the box.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And our last question from the audience is, if I'm using HP's workflow, why would I use Nlight's workflow?
Well, and I think Mark sort of hit on this a second ago. Our system is purpose-built for the data center, right? We just do things that are not necessarily represented in HPE ITSM. We are handling things like racks and servers and power and cabling and everything that's happening there. And so you could potentially, I guess, represent that in Service Manager if you wanted to, but you'd have to spend the 10 years that Nlight's worked on its product and millions of dollars developing what we've developed. I think that's me being a little cheeky, to use my British wife's comment. But really what it boils down to is we have this deep domain expertise, and by integrating into it, you get all the power of what's occurring in the data center feeding into your HPE ITSM solution, which increases the value and, again, creates full sort of from CMIN up to the application, full integration and visibility on what's transpiring at the data center floor and how it might impact elements of your application infrastructure and the applications themselves. So again, our workflow is purpose-built so that, as you know, somebody makes a request to install a server, we'll identify immediately where it should go based on the power requirements of that server, the space requirements, the weight requirements. We'll do all of that and make all those calculations. So our workflow takes care of all that and was really purpose-built for the data center. Anything you want to add, Mark?
No, I think you nailed it. You know, when we look at it, we do a number of workflows across the portfolio, and it kind of goes wide. And we create that opportunity so that partners can pick a particular workflow and go deep and make the investment to really embrace the challenge of the data center. And I think you hit it on perfectly, where you've embraced and put significant investment and really drove drove home the key elements that that someone would be looking for in that scenario. So I think you got it right.
Okay, so we're sort of running out of time. We've gone over. We have one more question.
Yeah, we have one last question from the audience. It's kind of a follow-up to the previous SM9 question. And the question is, I have SM9.34 and wanted to integrate with the native SM9 CMDB, not the UCMDB. So I guess to be specific, can we integrate the Nlight option into SM9 for all modules, or is there a requirement of UCMBD?
Okay, I think that question comes to us at Nlight, and I think we're going to have to get back to you on that one. I don't want to give a misleading answer. I'm going to have to, unless, Mark, you know for sure that everything's identical. I'm going to have to get back. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to suggest the same thing. Let's take that one offline. That sounds like a really good question, a particular use case, and let's take that one offline and see what we can do to help.
Yeah, and we've got a few other questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to it, but I did want to stick to a 30-minute hard stop, and we've sort of gone over that. So we will get back to everybody who's asked additional questions. Thanks for your time. Thanks for attending the webinar. We appreciate it. Mark Bradley, we want to thank you from HP for joining this webinar. If anybody wants to reach me, I can be reached at mark.gatos@nlight.com. If you have additional questions, you can also send them to info@nlight.com. Again, thanks for everybody, and we will get back to, we promise to get everybody that we did not get your question on the air. We will get back to you. So thank you, everyone, and that will bring this webinar to an end. Have a great day and enjoy the day. This day won't come again. Thank you.